This is Kymone Freeman here with We Act Radio in Anacostia with a special report on issues that should be of importance to you. Today's story is about Medric Cecil Mills, a man who died because he was denied emergency medical service by firefighters. On January 25th, 77-year-old Medric Cecil Mills went into cardiac arrest at a shopping center in Northeast Washington, across the street from Engine Company 26. Bystanders rushed to the fire station, asked for help, and was denied, and was told to call 911. Medric Cecil Mills was pronounced dead at MedStar Washington Hospital Center, tragically and possibly avoidably because of services that were refused to him by emergency medical personnel at Engine Company 26 fire station. Today, a press conference was held by the attorneys of Johnny Cochran's law firm who are representing the family. We go to there now.
Again, good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Evans, an attorney with the Cochran firm, and we represent the Mills family. On behalf of the Mills family, we would like to thank each of you for coming out today. Here with me today are the Mills family. I have with me Sandra Ann Mills. This is Mr. Mills' wife of 55 years, Marie Mills, his daughter and best buddy, and his son and namesake, Medric Cecil Mills III. I want to talk about Mr. Mills. You know, when you guys reported in the press, what you report is that he's the man who collapsed across from the fire station and no one came to his aid. But Mr. Mills was far more than that. He was known by his family as Gaga, thanks to his eldest granddaughter, Courtney. And he was more than just a man who suffered a fatal heart attack across the street from Fire Station 26, because the DC Fire and EMS refused to come to his aid at the time. It would have made all the difference. Mr. Mills was a resident of the District of Columbia since the early 40s. He was a husband. He was married for 55 years to the love of his life, Sandra Ann Mills, who he affectionately referred to as Termite. He was a father, a dad, a role model to his children and to many others in this community and the city. He visited the shut-in at many different nursing homes around the metropolitan area. He offered rides to neighbors and strangers alike. He would even give his last dollar to strangers in the community. He never met a stranger. Everyone he met was just a new friend. He was a veteran, having served in the Navy as a seaman during the Korean conflict. He was a constant force in the lives of his grandchildren. He was an avid Washington Redskins fan, and he always was adorned in burgundy and gold on game day. He was a mason. He was a shriner. He loved Washington, D.C. He worked in the private sector. He worked for the federal government. And for the last 47 years, including the last day of his life, he was an employee of the D.C. Parks and Recreation, where he graciously and generously served the residents of this city. So it is especially tragic, in my view, that someone who gave so much and for so long to this city, when the city he loved and served failed to come to his aid the one time he needed them. It is truly a tragedy. So we are here today because we want to expose to the world what is happening in the nation's capital when it comes to medical emergency response in the District of Columbia. This tragedy may have happened to the Mills family, but the rest of us should not breathe a sigh of relief, because what happened here could happen to anyone. Emergencies know no date, no time. It can happen at any moment in time. So for all of us, we should see what happened here as a call to arms. Change must come. Real change, not words on paper that do not carry the force of law. Not task force, not another review of the DC EMS services. There have been too many reports, too many reviews, and too many task forces about DC Fire and EMS. In the last 25 years, there have been four investigations into the delivery of emergency medical services through fire and EMS. 1989, 1997, 2002, and 2006. 2006 report and task force culminated in an investigation whose final recommendation, get this, the final recommendation in 2006 was for the council to develop a strategic plan to address the issues covered in the 1989, the 1997, and the 2002 reports. Why? Because it's the same thing that keeps happening. Many of the very same issues are at play in this tragedy that were experienced by the Mills family. Enough is enough. It is time for real reform. We don't need another task force or report. The time for talking about this problem is over. It is time for action, and time that the district allows itself to be held accountable for its egregious acts. The mayor has expressed his outrage and pledged to conduct an investigation. With all due respect, Mayor, we don't need another investigation. Members of City Council have expressed their regrets and sympathy. Such sentiments are appropriate and appreciated, but not to the exclusion of reform of the law. What is needed is reform of the law. So we are advocating that the mayor and the council change the law in the District of Columbia to allow the district to be truly accountable to this family and to all the residents and visitors who work and play in the city.
We've been deeply saddened and devastated by the sudden death of my father, Medric Cecil Mills, Jr. My dad was a devoted husband, loving father, a doting grandfather, actively involved in his community, and beloved by friends and neighbors. He was known affectionately to some as brother, as Cecil to others, and still many others as Gaga. My dad was a lifetime D.C. resident. He was a veteran joining the U.S. Navy and serving during the Korean War before being honorably discharged in 1959. He was involved in his community as a mason and as a shriner. He loved the city, worked for the Department of Parks and Recreation for 47 years. When he wasn't spending time with his children and grandchildren, my dad visited the shut-ins in the nursing homes around the D.C. metropolitan area. Always went the extra mile for the multitude of strangers who quickly became his friends. My dad leaves behind a legacy of love, kindness, and true sincerity. We and everyone who knew Gaga will miss him greatly. We, the Mills family, appreciate the community support during this difficult time. Your words of condolence and kindness have helped us greatly. We would also like to thank the Metropolitan Police Department officer who assisted my sister, Marie, on that day by waving down an ambulance that was not responding to my dad's emergency and accompanied her to the Washington Hospital Center. We have been profoundly shocked by the manner of my dad's passing. It is extremely painful to think that my dad could still be with us if he had been given the proper care by firefighters when he suffered a medical emergency. When my dad suffered a heart attack, there were firefighters in the station across the street. He was in clear medical distress. Bystanders were screaming for help to the firefighters who are provided training to respond to medical emergencies. But when a medical emergency happened right on their doorstep, they ignored us. My dad's death and the refusal of the firefighters to help is not something that should be expected by the D.C. Fire Department. We demand answers from the D.C. Fire and EMS Department, and we want someone to take the blame for this tragedy and for those responsible to be held accountable. It is undisputable that the firefighters should have tried to help my dad. They should have tried to prevent his death. This is a public safety issue. The fire department and EMS department have proven that it cannot hold itself to an acceptable standard on its own. There must be accountability. When D.C. residents suffer medical emergencies directly in front of the fire station and not receive help, serious reform is needed. There must be change. We do not want this story to be swept away and forgotten by the public. We are publicly calling for change in how the DC Fire and EMS Department operates and how it is held accountable. As an initial step, we are calling for the naming and firing of all DC Fire and EMS Department officials and employees involved in the tragedy who refused to provide care to my dad. We also are calling upon the mayor and the council to change the laws that do not allow the district to be held accountable in situations like this.
What Medric Cecil Mills III was referring to is called the Public Duty Doctrine. It states, the city doesn't owe a general duty to provide public services to an individual. The city then can't be held liable for negligence. So that means if it takes an hour for an ambulance to arrive, if you have cardiac arrest and you knock on a fire station's door and refuse service, the city is not accountable. You are a taxpayer, you're accountable. A citizen is accountable. But a medical emergency personnel is not accountable under the Public Duty Doctrine. And this is outrageous. And the mayor and the council have failed to act to do something. And we need to make sure that this changes.
What many people don't know is that the law in the District of Columbia makes it extremely challenging to hold public safety officials and employees accountable for these kinds of events. There is a doctrine called the Public Duty Doctrine, and it is tragically the law of the land in the District of Columbia. It's a nice name. It sounds like a positive and beneficial law, but in reality, it hurts families that are harmed by the carelessness of city employees. Under this doctrine, the city government may owe no legal duty to help or protect any specific resident. It means people who have been harmed by the actions or inactions of city officials have little to no recourse in the civil justice system. The Mills tragedy demonstrates that this outdated and unjust doctrine requires robust examination, and we call for that today. In 2010, Chief Ellerby was quoted as saying, "I don't ride a fire truck. I don't drive an ambulance. But I take responsibility if one of those units isn't where they're supposed to be in a timely manner." Well, Chief, we ask that you take responsibility in this instance, where your people were not where they were supposed to be in a timely manner. We call upon the mayor and the council to change the law. It is time for change. It is time for reform, and we demand it now. And we will demand it tomorrow, and we ask that you join with us on this cause because it affects everybody standing here. Everybody standing in this audience. Point your cameras back there and look at the people in this crowd, because if it happens to the Mills family, it could and likely will happen to you.
We encourage those who have experienced unacceptable care and treatment by the DC Fire and EMS departments to publicly speak out. We would like to partner with other citizens and organizations to advocate for change. We do not want anyone else to suffer a loss like ours and experience the tragedy that we've been through. And from our family, we would just like to thank those that assisted my sister and my dad on that day in this parking lot. May God bless you all in this hour.
The family is working with a local merchant who volunteered to establish a memorial fund to support the family and to fulfill Mr. Mills' dream of sending his younger granddaughter to college and funding her college education. Anyone who's interested in joining us in this venture, we ask that you contact Mills Family Fight for Justice at gmail.com for more information. I think that this event here should be a call to action for everyone, and that's why we are inviting others like the Rudder family and any other family that has suffered this kind of tragedy to contact us, to join us, and let us work together for change, because it is going to take a lot of action, not just individuals, but it is going to take organizations and a reform and sustained challenge to make change happen.
Medric Cecil Mills Jr. is dead, 77 years old, after being denied medical service by Engine Company 26 here in Washington, D.C., all because the public duty doctrine simply says that those public services are not guaranteed to be provided to public citizens. They can pay taxes, but they have no accountability. This speaks in stark contrast to the Good Samaritan laws that we are familiar with. The juxtaposition between Good Samaritan laws and the public duty doctrine is outrageous. The Good Samaritan laws offer legal protection to people who give reasonable assistance to those in need, injured, ill, in peril, otherwise incapacitated. Its purpose is simply to encourage people to offer assistance, even a duty to rescue, to keep people from being reluctant to help a stranger in need for fear of legal repercussions should they make some reasonable mistake in treatment. This is what the Good Samaritan law is. And obviously, D.C. emergency medical service personnel, the fire department, here in the nation's capital, are not good Samaritans. And we here at WEAC Radio are challenging the mayor and the council to do what they haven't done when they have failed to act to address this archaic and outdated, unjust law of the public duty doctrine. Our hearts go out to the families and to all those who have been affected by this tragedy, and all those who have died and suffered unnecessarily because of the public duty doctrine. We need more Good Samaritans. WEAC Radio, do something.